Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday Lunchtime Drive Through on Wednesday, January the 12th, 2022. I'm your host, Damon King. I'm a certified financial planner professional and wealth management advisor with ChappelWood Financial Services. And I'm also the lead instructor for ChappelWood University, which is the educational branch of ChappelWood Financial. And every week we come on the drive through to discuss a variety of topics, usually current events, certainly things that people are talking about and interested in, generally separate from what we discuss on our radio show. And there is no bigger topic, at least in the world of investing right now, than probably Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one of those things that everybody's heard of, but a lot of people don't understand what the heck it is. And I was inspired to talk about this today by one of the regulars here at the Wednesday Lunchtime Drive Through. He sits at the bar and eats his lunch with us every week. Dan, I'm not going to give his last name. I always protect the identities of innocent bystanders. But Dan, thank you so much for your inspiration. He asked a great question about Bitcoin. What did I think about Bitcoin? And he asked that last week. And so I thought, okay, well, let's talk about Bitcoin. And one thing that if you listen to our radio show, if you've ever attended one of my classes, if you're one of my clients, you know that I am not the kind of advisor who just summarily says that a given investment is good or bad. I don't paint the world in terms of black and white when it comes to investing. I mean, unless it's clearly a criminal enterprise, that's bad. But if it's a legitimate investment opportunity, there are pros and cons to everything, right? I mean, even buying, a good solid stock like Exxon, there's pros and cons to that, right? So I don't ever want to be the kind of advisor that teaches that way. And I don't ever want you to be the kind of investor that looks at the world only in terms of good and bad. Financial vehicles are not by their nature good or bad. Those are human characteristics. Financial vehicles, any investment is either appropriate or inappropriate for your level of risk, for your goals, that sort of thing. So that is how we're going to approach the topic of Bitcoin today. 5 pros and cons for investing in Bitcoin. So I'm going to give you what is widely regarded as good about it or an advantage of it, and then what is a disadvantage. So before we get into that, though, we need to discuss what exactly is Bitcoin and why are people talking about it? Bitcoin is one of a number of cryptocurrencies. And cryptocurrencies are a digital or virtual currency that exists only in electronic form. There is no actual currency. You see a picture of a Bitcoin up there in the corner, and that's kind of the image that has been created to represent Bitcoin. But in reality, there are no Bitcoins. People aren't walking around with Bitcoins in their pocket, at least not their physical pocket. Bitcoins are held in your virtual wallet online. That's the only place they exist. They're not issued by any government on earth. There is no government on earth right now that backs a cryptocurrency. Now, last week, I mentioned that Ecuador, I think it's Ecuador, is, I think, the only country on earth that has tied its currency to the value of something like Bitcoin, but they're still issuing government fiat currency. They are not issuing Bitcoin, but they're tying the value. It's no different than the United States at one time tied the value of the dollar to the value of gold, all right, the gold standard. So currency is backed by something, but cryptocurrency is backed by nothing. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Ownership of a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is determined by an online ledger, and that ledger is called blockchain. And the way to think about it is this: a blockchain is like a chain, and it's made of individual little blocks. And inside of each one of those blocks is a coin, a Bitcoin. And to access that coin, that block needs to be broken open or mined. And the way you break it open is with a series of complex mathematical algorithms. Blockchain is extremely difficult to hack because of the nature of the mathematical algorithms that support it. So For many people, the blockchain technology that supports cryptocurrencies is far more valuable than the cryptocurrency itself. And the reason for that is since blockchain technology is nigh impregnable, well, it has practical applications for things like security, right? For your personal information. Imagine storing all of your personal information, your social security, your credit card, all that stuff that is easily hackable right now. Storing it inside blockchain makes it a little harder to hack. Bitcoin is just one example of cryptocurrencies. Some of the other popular ones, Ethereum, Litecoin, Dogecoin, there are many others out there. But cryptocurrencies are essentially invented, all right? So let's now talk about what do the experts say, all right? So now you know what cryptocurrency is. Well, what do the experts say? Oh, actually, I did skip over one thing. Here's my disclaimer, all right? No part of this presentation today should be considered a recommendation for or against investing in Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. You are not going to hear the words come out of my mouth, I support this or I don't, all right? Any investment, I don't care what it is, carries the risk of loss. And your personal goals and appetite for risk should dictate what you invest in, not because something is the cool thing of the moment. The prime directive for investing: never invest in anything you don't understand. Pretty simple, right? If it's Bitcoin, if you don't understand real estate, you probably shouldn't be investing in real estate. All right. If you don't understand how your 401k works, before you invest in any of the funds in your 401k, you need to understand basically what they are, right? So again, that's my disclaimer. I am not giving you Bitcoin investing advice, even if you're my clients, okay? Because the Bitcoin and all cryptos are extremely volatile and carry a lot of risk. But let's talk about it. So there are many people who are in favor of Bitcoin and crypto, and there are many people who are skeptical. And that kind of clears things up, right? Some people like it and some people don't. There you go. There's your advice. All right. It really depends on whom you talk to. Who do you ask? And as I said, there are pros and cons to consider. So what I'm about to reveal to you are not my opinions. They're not the opinions of anybody here at ChappelWood Financial, but these are the opinions of proponents and skeptics, critics of cryptocurrencies. So the way we're going to present this to you, I'm going to present you with a reason or a pro for investing in Bitcoin, followed up by a reason or a con for not investing. All right. So we're going to give equal weight and time to both sides of this argument, and then you can decide how you feel. So here we go. The first pro: Bitcoin is decentralized and democratized. It is true that Bitcoin and really all other cryptos, so let's just talk about Bitcoin today. Bitcoin is not controlled by any government. It's not issued by any government. It's not backed by any government. It flows freely around the world. There's very little to no regulation over Bitcoin. So Bitcoin transactions are a great way, are a great use, are a great way to protect your identity. If you don't want anybody knowing what you're doing with your money and you want to go out and buy something, no, it's very difficult for anybody to track the movement of your Bitcoin around the world, right? The people are in control, all right? There's no banks involved, nothing like that. You, the people, power to the people, you are in control of this. And decentralization is key. It's the centerpiece of Bitcoin's appeal to those who are for it. But what about the cons? Most Bitcoin is controlled by a very small number of people. As widely distributed as people think it is extremely concentrated in the hands of just a few people. Bitcoin, first of all, has to be mined from the blockchain. We already talked about that. Now, you can go out and buy it, but if you want to get it for free, if you want to, not for free, but if you want to go get it and be the first one to own it, you have to mine it. And the only way you can really mine that is with a computer. And really, you need a series of computers that are networked working together to process these extremely complex, long mathematical algorithms. And those who have the biggest, fastest computers and the most money to be able to invest in a mining operation, think about it this way. There is a limited amount of gold on Earth, right? Gold, most of it is controlled by a small number of people. And to get it, you can either buy it from someone who already has it, but if you want to be the first one to own it, you have to go start a mining operation, right? A mining company. And you have to have equipment to be able to mine it out of the ground. And you have to have a way to process it and refine it. And the people that have the most equipment and the most money to be able to acquire it are the ones that are going to control most of it. When Bitcoin was invented, the person that invented it, I don't even know the guy's name, but there were only 21 million Bitcoins in existence. The vast majority of them have been mined already. Something like 20 million of them have been mined. So there are only like 1 million that are still yet to be mined. But because of this, there's a virtual arms race. Who can create the biggest, baddest mining operation to go out and find all these Bitcoins? Because he or she that has the biggest mining operation can control most of the Bitcoin. Currently, 50% of all Bitcoins in existence that have been mined are controlled by about 50 people. That doesn't seem like a very free-flowing currency to me. You know, I mean, think about your favorite company. Pick Nike, for example. Nike, good, solid company, great investment, right? But if the shares are controlled by only 50 people, that doesn't exactly seem free-flowing to me. So Bitcoin may be the currency of the people, but not very many people, because half of it is controlled by 50 people in the world. All right, a pro. Bitcoin's value will only rise. Well, by its nature, since Bitcoin is limited, it's more valuable, right? If something has scarce supply, even if it's 21 million, there is scarcity. There are only so many that are going to be produced. So that by itself provides value. If you go back and look at the performance of Bitcoin over the last 5 years, its value has risen 4,608%. Clearly, there's a demand there, right? More and more businesses are accepting Bitcoin as payment, and it's only a matter of time before Bitcoin becomes more mainstream. Last week, when Dan asked the question, how do you feel about Bitcoin? I actually believe that in the next 5 years, Bitcoin will become a more mainstream form of exchange, currency for exchange. I did not say that I think Bitcoin is worthless. I actually believe that at some point it will become more value, or that it will become more mainstream. And even our own government is looking at replacing the dollar, paper dollars, with virtual currency. There are many central banks around the world that have already started issuing virtual currency. The Federal Reserve right now has been asked by the federal government to research shifting all of our paper currency to a virtual currency at some point. It would still be dollars, but it would be virtual. Because think of all the printing that we wouldn't have to do. You're talking about billions and billions of dollars saved just in printing costs and distribution costs alone for paper and metal currency. All right. So proponents say Bitcoin's value will only rise, but the skeptics say Bitcoin's value is unsustainable. Bitcoin only has value because people say that it does. Now, that's true of other things like artwork, right? A piece of art by Picasso only has value because enough people in the world say, well, Picasso is a great artist, or was a great artist, so his work is extremely valuable. So I'm willing to pay that. Van Gogh, Tiffany jewelry only has value because people say that it does. Ultimately, the artwork or the jewelry doesn't really do anything. It just sits there, right? It's kind of like owning gold. A gold bar does nothing for you. It sits there and it's shiny and pretty. It has value because people say it has value, but at least gold has practical application. Gold is used inside of things like cell phones and other equipment and things like that. It's a really good conductor. But the problem with Bitcoin is that there is no government on earth that backs it, and there's no product or revenue stream that supports it. All right. There's nothing supporting its value. And part of Bitcoin's issue is its rising price. Yes, it's grown in value over 4,000%, but therein lies one of the key problems. It's really difficult to go out and buy Bitcoin. Right now, today, the value of Bitcoin at the time of this presentation, I think it's over $43,000 a coin. There are a few people out there who can afford even one coin. Well, if only a few people can buy it, and there's not that big of a market for it, who are you going to sell it to? It only has value if you sell it, right? I mean, you can buy and hold, but the only real way to benefit from the growth of any asset is to eventually sell it to somebody else. But if there aren't that many people on earth who can actually afford it, where's your market? If not enough people can buy it, eventually demand falls. And when demand falls for something, so does its price. So the value of Bitcoin has grown, but those who don't believe in this believe that it is unsustainable. All right. Another pro. Bitcoin will prosper because it's an anti-asset. A lot of people who believe in Bitcoin say one of its strengths is the fact that it is not dependent on any government or company. It is not dependent on the stock market at large. And as a result, it avoids all those issues. There's no regulation. We don't have to worry about interest rates. We don't have to worry about new laws. We don't have to worry about a company going out of business or a government defaulting. A lot of people see Bitcoin as a better hedge against inflation than owning gold or silver. People ask all the time, how much gold should I own to hedge against inflation? Bitcoin lovers are going to say, hell, don't own gold, buy Bitcoin. Look at the value, look at the price. A lot of people think Bitcoin is easier to understand than traditional investing. A lot of people are intimidated by investing in the stock market because they don't understand how these things work. But Bitcoin, that's easy. It's currency. It's a coin, even if it's virtual. Bitcoin is seen as the investment for the common investor. And for a lot of people, they like the symbol of rebellion and freedom that Bitcoin is. You know, you're investing, you're letting the man dictate what your money's worth, but not us. We're the mavericks. We're the independent ones. You know, we're taking that risk. But then the cons say, yeah, but Bitcoin, for all of your independence, for all of its dissociation from the stock market and government, in reality, it behaves just like a stock. In fact, it has a similar correlation to the broader stock market. It experiences wild price fluctuations. I mean, at one point, just a couple of years ago, Bitcoin was pushing $75,000, $80,000. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but it was clearly over 60,000. And then it'll drop to 30,000. At one point, Elon Musk came out and said, Tesla will now begin accepting Bitcoin for payment of our vehicles. And guess what happened to the value of Bitcoin? And one day, because one dude who's a billionaire said something good about it, the value went up. But then later on, he came out and said, nah, sorry, we're not going to do that. And then what happened to the value of Bitcoin? It plummeted. Do you really want an asset that is so dependent on one person opening their big mouth and is going to erode or increase value? That's a little tenuous. Okay. I mean, and at least stocks have something underlying them. There's a company there producing a product or service that they actually get paid for. There's earning there to support the price of the stock. Bitcoin produces nothing. It's a currency. You could say, well, the dollar doesn't produce anything either. It's just a currency. Yeah, but it's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Bitcoin is backed by nothing. So the people who are against Bitcoin say, you might as well just go to the casino and spend your money, because at least then you might get some free drinks. Bitcoin is no different than going to the casino and spending your money. That's what these people say. All right, next. The pros say Bitcoin will survive the implosion of fiat currency. What is fiat currency? Fiat currency is currency that is actually issued by a government, like the dollar, or the euro, or the peso, or the pound. Pick your favorite currency. Bitcoin is traded directly between people. There are no intermediaries. There are no middlemen. There are no banks to get in the way. And as a result, fewer hands touch it. And when fewer hands touch the distribution of something, the cost comes down, right? So it's people interacting with each other. If there's a government that is overthrown or defaults on its debt, its currency gets demolished. All right. It's one of the reasons why you hear people talk about all the time. The United States government is, we got to raise the debt ceiling because the government is in danger of defaulting on its debt, and its bond, its credit rating will lower. Well, what would happen in that case? Well, our currency would become devalued. Inflation would go sky high. It would cost more to live. That's one of the dangers of a government-backed currency. That's not a problem for Bitcoin because there are no governments involved, right? And since Bitcoin is encrypted, there is very little risk that a government or anybody else can dip into your funds, your bank account, and take it from you. Bitcoin is the future. Government currency is dying, at least according to a lot of the Bitcoin proponents. But what do the people against Bitcoin say? Oops. Bitcoin opens people up to fraud and crooks. Because Bitcoin is not regulated, there are no clearing agents. Bitcoin transactions are extremely risky. There are no receipts. There is no paper trail. Once the transaction is made, that's it. If you sell something to somebody and they pay you in Bitcoin, all right? And what if they spell the name wrong and they send it to somebody else? Or what if they get your bank account number and they add an extra zero and it goes to somebody else? What way do you have to get your money back? None. That's it. With Bitcoin, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? If you own it, if you have it in your possession, you're the owner. And as far as fiat currency goes, it's doing just fine. You go around, you look at banks and hedge funds, and they've got many, many issues that they're dealing with. The collapse of the global monetary system is not one of them. It's not really something they're worried about. So if banks and these large hedge funds aren't really concerned about the collapse of the global fiat money system, it's probably not something you should spend a lot of time worrying about either. Bitcoin transactions cannot be, or transaction errors cannot be fixed. They cannot be done. Like I said, whoever has the Bitcoin is the owner. This is why no one issues bearer bonds anymore. With bearer bonds, whoever had the bond was the owner. Didn't matter who it was supposed to go to. So crooks, there are a lot of crimes that are transacted in Bitcoin. It's untraceable, and whoever owns it, right? There's no paper trail. Okay, and finally, Bitcoin is too big to fail. That's what the proponents say. Bitcoin is too big to fail. Of all the cryptocurrencies out there, Bitcoin has very clearly become the most widely known and I would say the likeliest to achieve mainstream status. So I agree with what the proponents say. I believe that Bitcoin will eventually become more mainstream. Even Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos support it. Billionaires that everybody knows their name. I mean, why, if they support it, isn't that a signal to them and to you and to us that there's something to Bitcoin? I mean, they're very successful. You don't become a billionaire by being stupid. And even if the value isn't backed by anything tangible, like a product or a service or corporate profits, millions of investors can't be wrong, can they? If all these people are pouring money into it and its value is at over $40,000 a coin, they can't all be wrong, can they? If Matt Damon is pushing it on TV, it's got to be legitimate, right? Have you seen the commercials with Matt Damon? Fortune favors the brave, and he's walking down the hall, and throughout human history, the bold have known that to achieve great things, you have to risk much. And he's walking down and, showing it. And then he goes to, Mars, and who are going to be the first people to walk on Mars? Takes a lot of risk. To those with the guts go the glory, right? I'm not sure that's a sales pitch I want to listen to if I'm talking about investing my life savings. It's just me, all right? But that's what people say. Bitcoin is too big to fail. You know what else people thought was too big to fail? Enron. Bitcoin is not as big as it thinks it is. This is what the people on the other side say. Bitcoin has a superiority complex. It thinks it's bigger than it really is. But the reality is that if the value of Bitcoin fell to zero today, because of the small number of people who control most of it, its impact on global wealth would basically register like a so-so day in the stock market. It'd be like, okay. So it was, global wealth went down a couple percentage points today, or up a big deal. That happens on a daily basis. Not enough people own Bitcoin globally for it to really matter that much. And here's another thing. We've already talked about the fact that Bitcoin has to be mined. Now, most of it has already been mined, but to mine it, the energy consumed in a year to mine Bitcoin is equal to the total energy consumption for the country of Argentina. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of greenhouse gases, big carbon footprint put out into the world. And whether you believe in global warming or not, the reality is a lot of companies know that investors are following this stuff. And as a result, many governments and companies and institutions are going to be hesitant to embrace Bitcoin because it's such an energy hog. It burns a lot of electricity, which burns a lot of natural gas and oil and coal to produce it. And as a result, increases the carbon footprint. Why did Elon Musk come out later and say Tesla will not accept Bitcoin? Because they saw how much energy is consumed to mine it, and they got hammered by the environmental area, the environmental people. And Tesla is an electric vehicle. It's touted as clean energy. But yet you're going to accept payment with a currency that you had to burn the entire energy output of Argentina just to get it. Kind of a mixed message, right? So there you go. Those are the pros and cons of investing in Bitcoin, according to a lot of the people that are out there. So we have just a couple of minutes here. I would like to know what you think. What do you think about this? So you may enter your questions or your comments in the chat or Q&A box down. You should see the little toolbox or toolbar down at the bottom of your screen. I welcome your questions. I welcome your comments. How do you feel? What do you think? Okay, got our first question. Doug makes the comment, it doesn't feel like anything other than gambling. And I'm not going to disagree with that, Doug. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to say Bitcoin is a bad investment, but right now it is extremely risky. Unless you are willing to lose your entire investment, I would not invest in Bitcoin. Unless you are willing to stomach the possibility that it could easily go to zero, just as easily go to 100,000, I would not invest in Bitcoin. To Doug's point, if you go to Vegas and you're gambling with money, if you are not comfortable with the possibility that you could lose every dollar that you're gambling with, then you probably shouldn't go to Vegas, right? Bill says Bitcoin is worth the paper it's printed on. That's exactly right. Okay. And you can make the argument that that's true of many assets. There are many assets, other currencies are only worth the dollar that it's printed on. And it's only worth that because we, the people, accept that a dollar is worth a dollar. But the key difference between fiat currency, the dollar, and Bitcoin, crypto, a government backs one of them with its taxing power, its revenue generating power. Nothing backs Bitcoin. There was a question that came on here, way out of my comfort level. That's from Wendy. Yeah, again, Bitcoin and investing in any cryptocurrency right now is extremely risky. And if you do not have an extremely high appetite for risk, I would stay away from it. And I would say that for pretty much any a lot of investments. Real estate carries risks, right? Any investment carries risk. And if the risk required to invest in that asset exceeds your appetite for risk, I don't care what it is, you shouldn't be investing in it. All right? If it's not achieving or not serving some goal that you have. Jan says, too risky for me, but I do have $100 worth just to play with it and learn how it works. I think it's important to be informed. And Jan, you are exactly right. And I love your comment. And here's the reason I love it. I don't have a problem if you want to go out and buy some Bitcoin. I'm going to give you the same guidance, though, that I would give if you asked me about gold. I don't have a problem with investing in gold. What I have a problem with is if you're investing far too high a percentage of your total wealth in that one asset. Okay? Think about it like an alternative investment. If you want to own gold, that's fine. But based upon how much you have, I would limit my investment in an extremely volatile asset class like that to maybe no more than 1.5 to 2%, maybe even less. Okay. So if you're going to dabble, you've only got $100 at risk, right, Jan? And what I know about Jan and her husband, they've got plenty of money. They're not at any risk of running out of money, but she's not running out sinking $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 into that. Okay. So anyway, Dan says, thanks for the information. Although I'm at one of our rental properties waiting for a plumber to fix a water leak, wondering about that investment. Good presentation. Well, thank you, Dan. You were the inspiration. So I'm going to give you the gold star for today. I want to thank everybody so much for participating today. I do have one final thing. I'm about to share a link with you in the chat. So if you take a look at the chat, if you or somebody that you know is looking for a second opinion, those of you who are already our clients know that here at ChappelWood, we serve millionaires and aspiring millionaires. We are retirement advisors, meaning that we're looking at all of the issues you deal with in retirement, not just your investment portfolio. So you can schedule a Gold Bucket Optimizer appointment. It's a 30-minute phone call. So this is for either you, if you're not yet a member of our family, or if you know somebody that is looking for some guidance, you can share that link with them. And they can schedule that phone call online. Shelly will get in touch with them and we'll determine how best we can help. So I don't see any other client or any other questions right now. So thank you so much for participating in the Wednesday Lunchtime Drive Through today. A really interesting topic. I had a lot of fun. If you have any ideas or questions for future topics, I'm always looking. I also want to let you know that the drive-through for next week, what is that going to be? That's the 19th. I'm going to have to postpone or cancel the drive-through for the 19th. I've got another appointment that I need to participate in at the same time. So we're going to have to cancel next week's drive-through. So we'll be back the following week for the Wednesday drive-through. So until then, stay safe, stay well, stay prosperous, and we'll see you next time on the Wednesday Lunchtime Drive-Through. Bye-bye.